Hi, I have been working with my new industrial sewing machine. It is the best thing since sliced bread. I have loved working with this machine. I have done several projects, probably a dozen different projects on it in the couple of weeks that I've been working with it. It is simple. It is effective. It gets through all of the layers. It takes away the frustration of working with the domestic machine to try to make bags, especially when we're talking about bags that are vinyl bags that have multiple layers. The vinyl is a bit heavier, or bags that include, hang on, let me get this. Okay, bags like this. So stay with me as we go through this machine and how it works. After a lot of research and a lot of videos and watching other people that make bags on YouTube, I finally decided that the Juki DU1181N was the machine that I wanted to purchase. So right here with me is the machine that I purchased. I received it in the mail in several different boxes. I will put in the link the name of the site that I bought the machine from. I worked with a person named Steve. He was very helpful in helping us decide what we wanted to include in the order, and also sent us emails with YouTube videos on exactly how to put everything together, because the table comes unassembled. The machine head obviously is assembled, but getting it into the table and attaching the motor underneath and attaching the presser foot on the floor, all of that had to be put together. So there were detailed videos demonstrating exactly how to do that. So once we had it put together, I was excited to start doing some different projects on the machine. So one of the things that I did was the vinyl bag. So I was so excited about working with vinyl. I hadn't done a lot with vinyl. So this was one of the first projects that I did on the machine. This is marine vinyl, so it's rather thick, and there are places in the bag where there are lots of layers of vinyl that have to be stitched together. So when I was working with the industrial machine making the vinyl bag, there was never a time when the machine couldn't get through the layers. So I was very happy that the machine had the ability to get through the thickness of the vinyl, especially when there were multiple layers. And for instance, here, this is about 4 layers, and this is an example of me practicing to see that I had the right tension on the stitches. So it went through those layers with no problem. Another project that I worked on were the bags that were made with the foam. So this is, I have an example of the material. So this is a layer of cotton fabric on each side with foam interfacing in the middle. And so this is in itself not too bad. The domestic sewing machine can sew that, but if you get in a position where you have 2 or even more layers of that, it gets very thick. And what I was finding on my domestic machine is it was skipping stitches whenever it would sew through more than 1 or maybe 2 layers of this. So this bag includes some areas, for instance, when stitching this handle on, you're stitching through a handle that has nylon strapping in it, as well as cotton fabric on top of it. You've got the foam interfacing in the bag itself, as well as a zipper and several layers here of interfacing in the pocket that's on here. So the machine went through all of that and never had any problems with it. Also used it to make some smaller projects, like a small toiletry bag. It didn't have any problems with the more small areas of stitching. I didn't have any issues with that at all. So overall, the machine has definitely lived up to my expectations. So I'm really glad that I purchased the machine. So let's talk about some of the features of the machine that I really liked about the machine, and then some of the things about the machine that I hadn't expected that weren't really negative things because I love the machine, and I actually have made 5 of the duffel bags and about 10 of the small toiletry bags, as well as the vinyl bag, and I already have 2 more vinyl bags cut out ready to sew. So I've really enjoyed working with the machine, and every time I finish a project I'm excited to say, okay, what's the next project? Let's talk a little bit about the features about the machine that I really enjoy when I'm using this. So one of the things is definitely the walking foot, and this is one of the biggest things I think that people look for when they're looking for an industrial machine. The walking foot, in combination with the feed dogs on the surface of the machine, definitely when you're working with these heavier layers, walk across the fabric and pull the fabric through evenly from the top and the bottom. And that definitely helps to keep everything in place when you're working with such thick layers. So the walking foot has been great. Now I will say with the vinyl bag, I did have a situation where the walking foot was a little too wide for some of the tight spots that I was trying to do when I was attaching the gusset to the front and the back of the bag. The walking foot is a 2-piece foot. There is a piece on the left side and another piece on the right, and when you put them on there together, they make the walking foot that gives you that walking feature. On the bottom of the walking foot itself has little ridges, and depending on what you're sewing with that, it could damage like vinyl or that kind of thing if you weren't, if it was a delicate type material that you were sewing with. And they do sell a walking foot like this one that's smooth on the bottom. So there's several different specialty feet you can use. There's a quarter-inch width foot, and I believe a 4/8 inch width foot. There's several different sizes of feet that you can put on it. So that's one thing that I did like. One thing that I wasn't as happy about was that the plate on the table of the machine doesn't have any engraved lines that tell you what's a 1/4 inch, 3/8 inch, 1/2 inch, that kind of thing. And there wasn't any aftermarket plates that you could purchase that fit the 1181N. There are some plates like this on the market that say the 1181N will work with them, but be very careful about that, because the hole where the feed dogs come up on that plate don't necessarily fit the 1181N. But I've got washi tape and I'm able to measure what that width is, because some of the bags require 3/8 inch seam allowances. Some of the bags are 1/4 inch and some of the bags are 1/2 inch. Threading the machine is simple. Once you remember the path, there's really no issue there. The other thing is I am using a thicker thread, which actually I was kind of pleasantly happy that the top stitching with the thicker thread looks really good on the bags. You can see that there's extra top stitching on the strap of this bag, and the thickness of the thread that I was using made for a really nice top stitch when I was making it. As well as on the straps, you can see that there's stitching on the strap of the bag, and the extra thick thread really made for a really nice top stitch. I'm using a heavier gauge thread. I believe it's Tex 70. That gave me a really nice top stitch. Also gives a really strong stitch. So your seams are really strong, especially when you're working with heavier vinyls and that kind of thing. You will have spots that'll be kind of tension spots, and the thicker thread works really well. You can see behind the machine that there is a spool holder that holds 2 different spools of thread, and even the largest type spools of thread will fit on there. They can hold any size spool of thread that you want to put on there. And I found that it was a little more challenging to get specific colors in the heavier weight thread. Some of the colors like the pink and the lime, those colors weren't as easy to find in these heavier threads than normal threads. So I had to shop around for the specialty colors that I knew that I'd want to use when I was doing my bag. Another thing that I like about the machine is that the machine is made of metal, and it's a mechanical machine, not an electronic machine, so you can add magnets to the machine to hold things. It doesn't have a thread cutter on the machine like the domestic Jukis do and my Baby Lock does. When you're sewing a stitch line, the first thing that you need to do once you've completed your line and you've done your back stitching to assure that the stitching is secure, you pull that out from under your thread. Well, now you need to cut that. So it's nice to have a pair of scissors or snippers very close by, because you're going to be cutting that every time you pull it off the machine, as well as trimming the excess thread from the front of the seam. So a lot of snipping of threads. I found that keeping a garbage can close by made it so that as I snipped those threads, I could drop them directly into the garbage can, because it makes me crazy when I have threads all over the floor. This is the reverse. So when you start a seam, when you're sewing and you want to do the back and forth stitch, this is the lever that you push for that. This is the stitch length dial. So that dial allows you to do larger stitches for basting, as well as more medium-sized stitches for top stitching, as well as some smaller stitches. With the vinyl, it's never good to use too small of a stitch length, because it can put holes in that vinyl to cause it to tear. It also has a bobbin winder on the side, so you can pull your thread back through the guide and to the bobbin and wind bobbin here. One thing to note is that when you wind a bobbin and you put your foot on the foot of the machine to wind the bobbin, the needle is going to go up and down while it's winding a bobbin. So you either, a couple of different things. One is you can put your bobbin on here, and as you sew, it can also be winding the bobbin, so you don't have to stop and do that. The second thing is, if you do stop and do that, you just want to, I just tried to make sure that I unthreaded the needle on the machine, because it's going to go up and down in the hole while it's winding the bobbins. The bobbins are large bobbins, so they're M, the size of them are M size bobbins, so they hold a little more thread because they're larger, but the thread is thicker because I've been using a thicker thread, so still have to kind of be aware that you may need several bobbins of the color of thread you're working with to get through a project. You may want to go ahead and wind 2 or 3 bobbins before you start a project. I could also change the tensions on the machine and use a different type of thread and use it to do things like binding on quilts and that kind of thing. I haven't tried to do that yet, but those are some of the other things that I may use the machine for in the future. Okay, I have enjoyed the last several weeks working with this machine, because I have been so frustrated trying to use my domestic machine to make a bag. I did a video a couple of months ago where I was making the Buy Annie Get Out of Town Duffle 2.0 bag, and although it didn't show that in the video, my domestic machine really struggled through some of the layers in that particular pattern. So if you're interested in an industrial machine and you're not sure if you want to take the leap and do that, if you have the budget for it and you have the room for the larger table, then it may be something that you want to invest in. I have not regretted it. I love this machine. I have, you know, when I bought my Baby Lock that also is a single needle embroidery machine, there was a learning curve to that, and I had to, you know, go through the books and figure out how to use all that. This machine was basic. This was just like the, you know, this had a similar threading and similar feel to it as one of the first machines that I used when I was using, you know, Mom's hand-me-down machine when I was a teenager. So it was just delight. I was just totally, I can't even express how delighted I was to work with a machine that worked, didn't have any issues. I didn't have to read a big manual. I didn't have to have a lot of extra skills or learn a computer program or any of that. This machine works awesomely well. So I'm really glad that I took the leap and I bought the machine. I have enjoyed doing the projects. I've got several other projects cut out, ready to go for this machine. So if you're considering it, the DU1181N has been a great machine for me. And I don't have a sponsorship. I'm not, I'm not anyway affiliated with Juki or the company where we bought the machine, which I'll put in the description. I've just been very happy with the machine, and I've also been happy with the customer service when we made the purchase, and the responsiveness when we were asking questions or looking for the zipper foot and that kind of thing. So if this video was helpful in any way whatsoever, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications so that you'll be notified as we put additional content on the YouTube channel.